What's the craziest thing you've heard someone say after they thought the phone call had ended, but they forgot to hang up? Story 1. Called a tech support number for a work-related issue during COVID. Guy was clearly at home and could hear a dog whining in the background. He got my error code straightened out. We both said bye, but before I could hang up my phone, I heard, "Who's a good boy? Are you a good boy?" I said quietly, "I am." Then just heard laughing and he said, "I am so sorry," and then hung up. I wanted to hear his puppy. For some reason, the whole who's a good boy, I don't know. I thought it was going in a different direction, if you know what I mean. Glad OP just seems like a wholesome guy. Or gal, I don't know. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. I was the third party in this. A coworker failed to hang up properly after a conversation with the boss, and promptly went on a very creative, expletive-laden rant about the boss and what he should do with himself. As this went on, I received a text from the boss suggesting I should inform the coworker that she had not hung up. I got the coworker's attention and told them that they hadn't hung up. Still in expletive mode, I was asked what made me think that. My response was, I got a text from boss. First time I ever saw color literally drain from someone's face. Story 3. Business conference call. The other side had asked some pretty stupid questions, but was still poised to do over $1 million worth of business with us. Thinking the call had ended, one guy in the room started calling them frickin' idiots, and talking about how what they were trying to do was never going to work, etc. They didn't say anything else, but we all heard the sound of the other side disconnecting, and they later reached out and said they were going to go in another direction. Story 4. I work at a children's hospital, and anything serious like a code blue is called out hospital-wide over the loudspeakers by dialing a specific phone extension. There has been a few times where someone hit the hold button instead of end call, and the whole hospital gets to listen to the hold music until someone catches it. The worst/funniest though was a couple weeks ago. Every single employee, parent, and child in my world-renowned children's hospital heard this poor guy scream the F-bomb when he realized it was still on. Hearing hold music in a hospital for some reason is weirdly frightening to me. I could be there for a stomach ache, but I hear hold music and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna die here. I don't know, I can't explain it. Story 5. Stupid frick fell for it. This is from a student's parent while I was excusing their kid from an assignment they missed because their grandmother just died. She hadn't. Still, the kid wouldn't pass the class under any circumstances because he was a complete knob. Once I talked to his parents, I knew why. So he still failed the class even without the assignment. So I know one of us was the stupid frick, just not sure if it's the same person they think it is. Story 6. Not really crazy, but my grandparents would always call me from 2 different phones in their house so we could all talk. When they'd get my voicemail and leave a message, instead of hanging up, they'd talk to each other. Usually silly things like what's for dinner and stuff like that, but it always made me smile. I wish there had been a way to keep them back then. Story 7. I worked in sales, inbound call, and had a pleasant conversation with a customer who politely declined the offer and told me she was going to look elsewhere. We said our goodbyes, nothing out of the ordinary. Really sweet lady, had called in with her husband. As soon as she thought she hung up, she slammed her phone down and starts yelling at her husband. Frick, company name. Are you freaking crapping me right now? $350 a year? I'm not paying that much for this goddamn piece of crap product. How the frick could that jerk pitch that with a straight frickin' face? I gave her the decency of hanging up myself after that, but she was 100% in the right being upset. Story 8. I have a not muted story. WebEx. 500 people in the call. Right when everyone was getting used to working remotely. Whoever set it up didn't mute the audience by default. The chaos was amazing. Dozens of people simultaneously unmuted and going about their lives. Dogs barking, kids crying, kitchen utensils clanging, the call leaders pleading for people to mute themselves. My favorite part was when things were mostly quiet. About 5 people were still unmuted, including one guy who thought he was muted, and yelled, "Jesus frickin' Christ, people, mute your frickin' phones!" before realizing he was not on mute. They threw in the towel and ended the 1.5-hour meeting after 15 minutes. This is incredible. I can't even explain it. It's so funny to me. Just the idea of 500 people's garbage microphones and then the insane background noise that you would always hear. I'm just imagining that one guy with a terrible mic in an online game who always insists on talking, and it sounds like a restaurant is going on in the background, but that times like 500. That's some good stuff. Story 9. I had a job where I was in a position to write off a substantial phone bill, which the customer said was because her mother was dying overseas and she had dementia and needed to hear things in her voice to believe anything, including doctor's instructions. She was heartbroken and sobbing about how if she just had that kind of money to pay this phone bill, she would have just gone back to her country, because the flight would have cost less. She was right about that. I wrote off the entirety of the phone bill, and she cried like a jilted lover in a rom-com and said people like me are angels from God, etc. After I wished her a good evening and she thought the call was ended, she says to someone in a perfectly normal voice, "Well, that worked." I feel like I must have been lucky to be born when I was, because I can't imagine a phone bill as big as a plane ticket? Is that a relic of the past, or is that like actually a recent thing with just insane overseas charges and a bad plan? I don't know. It sounds insane to me. Story 10. Worked at a call center years ago and a customer was kind of panting / trying to sound normal at the same time. As soon as the conversation ended, they thought they hung up and they just went full on hardcore moaning and dirty talk, and continued doing what they were doing before answering the phone. What boggles my mind is the fact that he answered the phone to begin with. Story 11. Not a crazy story, but I had just finished talking to our client over the phone. We said our goodbyes, and then I hear her ask, "Are you wearing pants today?" I wasn't sure how to answer that, but I figured that she was jokingly asking because everyone just started working from home due to COVID. I just replied, "Yes." She then burst out laughing, trying to explain that she thought she had already hung up and was actually asking her husband. We laughed about it for about 3 minutes before we actually hung up. Story 12. Mine was a butt dial, not a failure to hang up. My parents are divorced and remarried. When I was 17, I lived with my mom and would see my dad on the weekends. I knew that my dad and stepmom were possibly trying to have kids, but they hadn't really said much to me about it. I got an accidental call from my dad while they were breaking the pregnancy news to my stepmom's parents. I answered and I could hear my step-grandmother saying, "Congratulations, we're so happy for you both." I listened for a couple minutes and was able to put together what the congratulations was about. My mom and stepmom told me about the pregnancy the next time I saw them and I had to act surprised. I didn't want to ruin it for them. I didn't tell them until years later that I had actually found out about my future brother from inside my dad's pocket. Well, yeah, your future brother absolutely would be in your dad's pocket. I'm sorry, I had to. It was right there. Story 13. Last year, my job was monitoring call quality, so I would usually listen to phone agents in real time. In one instance, there was a caller that was simply not understanding what was being said. After the agent got off the phone with him, there was a 3-second window where I can still hear the agent scream, "Jesus, screw him!" Didn't mark them for it as the call had technically ended at that point. Another time where someone placed a caller on hold, but because of how the phone system works, I can still hear the agent even if the caller is hearing music. She placed the caller on hold to call her sister and plan a vacation. Oh, so people actually do listen to those calls where it's all like, "This call may be monitored for quality assurance." That's crazy. I kind of just thought they said that so you didn't cuss out the employees or something. Story 14. My mother-in-law had a new boss who hated her. She was about 3 years from retirement and she felt like he was trying to push her out early so she'd lose part of her pension. She asked me to check her answering machine while she was gone after her mother died and let her know if anything important came in and to water her plants. The third day or so I'd been there was a message from this boss giving his condolences. Then you could hear the click where he thought he'd hung up, but must have placed the receiver just wrong and was still on the line. He ruthlessly made fun of her with his wife for the next 5 minutes before saying, "Oh crap," and hanging up. She was at a really low point in her life and I didn't have the heart to tell her or leave the message on the machine. It would have crushed her. But I did record it and then deleted it. Then I called that jerk and told him what I had done, why I wasn't telling her right now but absolutely would if needed in the future, and told him I'd better hear nothing but how wonderful work was going for her and how well she was treated until she retired. I told him I didn't even understand what a piece of crap you had to be to talk about someone like that behind their back, and especially at such a time in their life. And that's exactly what happened. She had a wonderful last few years and figured that her mother dying had opened him up to treat her kindly and with respect. That was 20 years ago, and I never told her, and never will. I wouldn't want to ever take those last few years there away from her. Story 15. Not sure if this fits. I sat in on a remote interview. We were in the conference room with 2 screens, one showing the interviewee and the other showing us. Nearing the end of the interview, I noticed my boss seemed to have developed an unusual neck spasm. He would face the screen and then suddenly look to the side, then face the screen again. At the end of the interview, as the candidate was exchanging thank yous, etc., I leaned over and asked if my boss was okay. His answer was just loud enough to be picked up by the microphone. "If you twist fast enough, you can see your own ear." Needless to say, the job offer was not Accepted. Story 16. My best friend at the time had been conducting a year-long prank on me in middle school when I was too stupid to know any better. She claimed to have a brother that had seen me on campus and had a crush on me. She did a very convincing voice impression of a guy and would hand off the phone to her brother when I would call sometimes. She was living with her grandparents while her other siblings, 2 sisters that were real and the brother that wasn't real, lived with her mom. So when I went over to visit, I never saw him and never suspected a thing. One day I was talking to this fake brother and it was starting to get a little intimate. I was a romantic, what can I say? He abruptly tried to end the call and thought he had, when I heard my best friend say, "That was close, she almost got me." I proceeded to correct her and didn't talk to her for months. Later on, due to other events I won't get into, I suspected she was a lesbian who actually had a crush on me and was in denial. Don't know where she is now, and it's been years since I've heard from her. Whoa, kids can be so mean with their pranks. I had a similar thing happen on a much lower scale when I was a kid, and it pissed me off. I do gotta say though, the kid kinda executed it pretty well except for that one slip up at the end. Being able to pull off like a convincing boy's voice? Like damn, this girl should be a voice actor. Story 17. In the early days of Facebook, my former father-in-law was just discovering it and connecting with old friends. He was having fun seeing who gained weight, who got divorced, who's a millionaire now, and so on. One guy he connected with gave him his phone number, so father-in-law calls him. He didn't answer, so he leaves a message, something like, "Hey Bill, it's been a while, just wanted to catch up. Give me a call back at phone number," and then hit the end button and jokingly said, "And I heard you got fat," and looked down, and to his horror, the call was still active and recording the message. So it probably sounded like, "And I heard you got fat. Oh crap, oh my god, it didn't hang up. Oh shoot, it's still recording." Click. To my knowledge, dude never returned that call. Story 18. My crazy mother had called me while arguing with my stepfather. He was a truck driver and she would frequently go with him on his routes and just leave us at home alone. That's a different story. At this point in time, I was about 11, and my mom had called me on our landline while she was arguing with my stepdad. This would happen quite frequently. He would accuse her of sleeping with other men, other dumb crap, which wasn't the case. He was the one sleeping around, actually. And she would call me and my younger siblings on the phone to vouch for her as if we weren't just innocent frickin' children. Well, this time she was screaming and crying like a mad woman while on the phone pleading to my stepdad to not leave her, blah blah blah. This was a very traumatic time, but now looking back as an adult, I feel nothing. They were adults acting like imbeciles. Well, they continued arguing on the phone. I said my part, told my mom to calm down when they were coming home because we needed food, etc. Frequently, we would be left with no water or light. It didn't matter to them because they were constantly on the road and could eat/shower at the truck stops. So who cares about us kids, right? Our only meals were the ones at school, and I would dress and get my siblings ready. No other adults in our lives ever even suspected a thing, which is so sad looking back. I guess I was no help on the other side because she seemingly hung up the phone, but I could still hear them arguing. I then heard my stepdad say, "I can't stand those frickin' kids." Which my mom replied with, "You don't like kids? You don't love my kids? I want to be with you. I'll unalive them if you want." That moment left me frozen, and after that day, 13 years ago, I never brought it up. But in those passing months, I definitely had trouble sleeping, always thinking our own mother was going to unalive us at any given moment just to make an abusive, disgusting excuse of a man happy. I have never brought it up to any of my siblings or to anyone in my life in general until now. They are still together, still very much abusive to each other. When I hear them yell now as an adult, it triggers my flight or fight. And it's like I'm being taken back to when I was 10 again. But now I'm able to snap myself out of it and realize I'm an adult and their decisions can't hurt me anymore. But when I see them both, I think of that phone call. Gives me goosebumps sometimes. I guess I'll never understand how a woman, a mother, if I can even call her that, would be willing to threaten to unalive her own children just to please a man who did/does nothing but treat her like crap. They are both abusive to each other, so I will never understand why they enjoy living this way. They both need help. I have forgiven her though, even though she's never apologized for a single thing. I bring up a lot of traumatic things that have happened, and she always claims I made them up. Just a child's imagination, and she says that my childhood was good. It gets exhausting arguing, so I've just let it go. My only gain from the past is knowing never in hell do I want a man like that, or to have children that would live through something like that. She taught me what kind of woman I don't want to be, and I'm grateful for that. Story 19. I was at a bar with some friends when one of the guys was complaining about his long-term girlfriend to us, which is fine, that's what friends are for. To the bartender as well, whatever, he gets paid to listen to people complain and he couldn't care less. And to the girl he was attempting to hit on, which is not something we've seen from him before. Then his girlfriend called him to ask him something real quick. He answers her question, then puts the phone down and turns to the girl, saying, "See, that's what I'm talking about. Not only can she not bang, but she can't figure out basic things for herself. That's why I want out. I want a girl who can think for herself. And a girl who can bang right." Wink. Side note, the thinking for myself thing was something he overheard the girl had been saying about herself in an earlier conversation with her friend about her career path. I look down and see the phone screen still on, the timer still counting up. I nudge my friend and nod towards the phone. He picks it up confused, thinking someone must have called him or something. He said, "Hello?" but only heard a click. Later that night, he got home and rightfully found all of his crap in the yard. 4-year relationship ended over it. He called me at 3 a.m. asking if he could crash at my place. Of course, I let him. I'm not going to let a friend be literally stuck out in the cold. He stayed for a week while I helped to negotiate the breakup to keep it as amicable as possible. As someone trusted by both parties, I helped make sure he could collect his things without her having to be there, and did my best to be the neutral third-party arbitrator. After a week, he moved in with some other people, and I told him that while I'm glad I could be there for him in his time of need, his need was self-produced, and that I could no longer be friends with someone who would be willing to treat other people the way he did that night at the bar. He was shocked, but it's something the rest of our friend group discussed and none of us were comfortable with. How freaking hard is it for people to just leave relationships they don't enjoy? Like, it's crazy. You obviously don't want to be involved anymore, so just don't. Don't let it get to this terrible point where you feel like screaming about it to everybody else except discussing it with her. Like, come on, dude, just be better. But I am pretty proud of OP's friend group for, kicking him out, essentially, because that was not cool. Complaining is fine, but complaining like that while actively trying to hit on someone else when you're in a 4-year-long relationship? Yeah, get a hold of yourself, dude. Story 20. Found out I was single this way back when I was in the army. I got the chance to call my girlfriend and took it. It was a nice call. She told me what she's been up to and all that. We made some plans for some leave I would be getting soon, and we said goodbye, and she hung up. I still had a few minutes, so I just sat there holding the phone so the next guy wouldn't hassle me for it, when I hear from the line, "So, when's he coming back?" "Not for a couple weeks. We have plenty of time." "You're going to break up with him before that, right?" "Of course." I hung up and felt like crap. Ghosted her when I went on leave. Later found out she's been seeing the other guy for a while. Didn't see her for years and years until one day I was taking my kid to get pizza at a place in a strip mall, and there she was, standing next to an SUV, staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. I waved, went inside, and that was it. Story 21. I have a friend that is awesome to hang out with, but she can be super flaky. Her brother was dating another friend of ours, but they lived in Thailand together. The mutual friend was home for a bit and was heading back the next morning, so we met up with a few other friends. The flaky friend said that they would be there, but flaked. When I called to see if we could get a hold of her, it went to voicemail and I thought I hung up. Instead, she got a voicemail of an exasperated me saying she always freaking does this. I don't think she shows up more than a third of the times we make plans. She confided in me a year later that she had gotten it, but thanked me because she said she hadn't realized how bad she'd been about keeping plans. The voicemail had her reflecting, and she started making a point of keeping plans after that. Said it helped improve her depression. I was so embarrassed, but I'm glad there was at least a happy ending.